Hello. I spoke in an earlier video about getting inspiration for games. One of the things I mentioned, I think I mentioned anyway, was the fact that I grew up in England where we've got lots of history. And that was kind of driven home to me this weekend because we went to Clacton-on-Sea for the weekend, which was very nice. And I went to see Colchester Castle, which was absolutely fantastic. That's got history going right back to Roman times, then through to Dark Ages, and then it was built on again, sort of medieval. And then there was another level of history that I saw going down the coast, because there's Napoleonic, from the Napoleonic Wars, there's fortresses, towers, defensive towers built down the coast, and these were built to have cannons on and to deny access to the English countryside, because the French army were known for being able to march and forage at the same time. So they wanted to make it as difficult as possible. And just being in those places is just a massive source of inspiration. It gets your imagination going. Just looking up at these walls, I was looking up at Colchester Castle and looking up at these huge walls and looking at the way the towers were built. I mean, a lot of it's there's a bit of a ruin now. There's plenty of ruins on the ground around it, but absolutely stunning. And I remember, and then I think about all the other places that I've visited, like Warwick Castle, like Colmy Castle, which is my favourite castle. Back in Lichfield, where I come from, we had loads of ruins there. There was an old abbey. We've got the old cathedral there, which they first started building, 800 years ago, just not long after the Norman Conquest, which is on the site of a previous cathedral that had been there, which is, and the history of Lichfield goes back past the Dark Ages and back to Roman times, where the Watling Street used to go up through Lichfield, and we've got the wall, the Roman ruins there. So that gives me inspiration. That gives me inspiration on lots of different levels, because then I start to think about the history of made-up worlds. And of course the master of that was J.R.R. Tolkien. He gave history to his locations. The reason why the places are named the way that they are. The history of that location, who used to live there, who used to live there before they did, and then who before they did, and then how the world was created, etc, etc. And then that got me thinking as well about actual history. So when I think of Lichfield with the Roman ruins, I think how it used to be a Roman sort of fair. It's like a Roman garrison there, and there's like it's basically like services along the motorway. You know what I mean? It was built around the roads. It was a major trading area, and there were baths there. And after that went, and then that was built on, and then they built the centre of the diocese there of Lichfield Cathedral. And then it's just got so much history and different reasons why these things happened. The Romans invaded, they built that, and then when they left, and then the Saxons came and they changed things, and then of course then the Vikings came over and maybe they changed things then, and then the Normans invaded, and then that changed, and it changed hands a few times, and then Henry VIII happened, and then the Reformation, and then all that and it all changed again. You know what I mean? So many things have happened to the area in its history, and it's the same everywhere. Same in Colchester, the history of that castle, and so that gets me. Creatively, that gets me thinking. That gets me thinking about the history of the places that I'm creating. So it's very easy for me to create a village and call it Oldbury, and this is where they make fantastic wine, and this is the inn called the Knight's Helmet, and that's it. But that's it. It's just a location. And then you give it you make it aesthetically pleasing. You describe what it looks like, usually a medieval village, and then that's it. That's it. But that's got, after visiting, especially visiting Colchester, that sort of gets me thinking about the history of the village. Why is the village there? Well, why is the town there? Is it supporting a larger city? Is it part of a larger city? Was it built for anything specific, like fortifications? Is there a road that it travels along, that it was built along so that they could, turn it into a trade route? Maybe there were mines nearby where they struck copper or silver or gold, and that's why the town grew. So what state's the town in now? Maybe those mines have run dry. Is the mine okay? What was there before? Is it built on the ruins of a previous town or a previous village? What's the history of the land? Were they invaded by another country or another land or another realm, and then they built their own town? So now these people have now built on top of their ruins, or maybe they've used what they left behind as their own houses, and that's what gives it this special ancient look and feel. They've just completely reused the materials that the predecessors left behind. That gives it a lot more depth and a lot more character, and I'm sure most designers do this anyway, but you know what I mean? It's just for me, I just find it exciting. I think it makes me, it gives the location depth. It gives it reality. It gives it something tangible to hold on to. And you don't have to explore that history, but if you give it that history and you allude to that history, it gives it depth, and that in turn, that then that feeling that you give then is passed on to the players, and then the players feel that, and then they feel the history and the weight of the history of that location, and that's what it gives it its own reality. And then I've got the plus side of this, me changing things up. So I saw these Napoleonic forts. They're literally just towers, round towers, which they'd put about 3 cannon on top, and they were situated along the coast, so they could probably signal each other, you know, if the Napoleonic fleet was coming across the channel, which they were worried about at the time. So of course my imagination starts thinking, and I start thinking, well, what if there's dragons? What if they're coming over with dragons? How do you defend against dragons? So have you built these towers? Are they really thick to withstand dragon fire? So they're not going to have windows then, are they? Because you don't want the dragon fire coming through the windows. So they've got to be really heavy bricks, and these dragons must be quite strong. So you want something that's going to withstand a dragon attack. So if you're going to put a weapon on top, it's going to have to be something that's going to kill a dragon, be it a cannon, be it a huge catapult or a ballista firing, I don't know, diamond-tipped crossbow bolts or what have you, whatever kills a dragon. You're going to have something huge, but then that makes that a target then. So you're going to need something to protect that weapon from the dragon. So you're going to stick these 20-foot poles with spikes on in all directions so the dragon can't swoop down and crush it. So what does that give you? That gives you a fort with a massive catapult on top, which is quite expensive and has to be manned. The fort itself is only accessible by one door. It's got no windows because you don't want dragonfire getting there. And it's looking like a porcupine because there's loads of spikes sticking out for a dragon attack. But then the dragon would be able to use its breath. So how do you stop that? Well, I don't know, maybe there's also masses of buckets all the way around it, so if the dragon does come down with dragon fire, somebody pulls a lever and massive cascades of water come down on top of the catapult. Or maybe the catapult's armoured, it's actually encased in thick hide or some sort of metal that deflects the excesses of heat, and so that makes it a beacon because it reflects light, so it's a massive beacon on top of this tower which can be seen for miles. And then you've got lots of these towers going down, you know, it's just literally just go off on one, literally thinking, oh, how does that work? How would that work against a dragon? How would those people react to something attacking them from the sky? And then what happens when it becomes defunct? What happens if all the dragons there are dead, or they go off somewhere else, or they don't invade, or they start an alliance? Then what happens to the tower? I mean, in the Napoleonic Tower that we were looking at, once it stopped being used to defend itself against the French, it was then used, I think it's like for storage, and then it was used as a water tower for, there was a butler, like a big holiday camp there at the time. It closed in 1983, but up until that point it'd been used as a water tower. So you've got what was originally built to defend the country was now supplying water to a holiday camp to people who wanted to holiday on the coast. Things changed vastly over 150 years. So yeah, bit of a pointless video, I suppose. You can find inspiration anywhere, and literally just go out and literally just go to ruins or go to something old and find out the history of something, and you'll find that history goes back and back and back, and there's layers and layers and layers. And if you put that same kind of history into locations that you're designing, it gives them such depth that they almost become real. So that's a bit of a rambling one, actually. I don't know what I want to call this video. I don't want to call it inspiration again. I've already used that one, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's that. So thanks for listening. Ta-ra.